Welcome back to Freedom to Learn podcast. My name is Gurumurthy Yeleswarapu, founder and CEO of Siliconvalley4u. And for those who are new to this podcast, please subscribe and press on the like button. You'll get a bunch of episodes your way. Today, we have very, very, very long friend of mine and one of the um, executives in Bay Area for a very long time, and he has a lineup of companies. He worked for anywhere from Yahoo all the way to Facebook. You can list, you can just come up with the list. I think he worked for all those companies pretty much. And he and I used to work for a company called Tandem. Now it's part of HP now. So he's going to talk about his journey and where he's at and what he thinks of industry and education system and everything. So welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Guru. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So just for starters, just why don't you tell about yourself and how you started your journey in India, what brought you to our US, and then what you've been doing since you came to this country.
Sure, happy to do that. So I grew up in Bombay. I did my education there for the early education, elementary school, high school, and something called junior college, all the way to 12th grade. And then from there, I went and did my engineering in a school called IIT which is in Varanasi, and it's one of the IIT systems colleges. Graduated with my engineering degree and decided, hey, let's take a shot at a sales job, believe it or not, which was one of the companies that came to the campus. And I was very intrigued by a sales job. Don't ask me why, but the idea of being able to sell to customers was an interesting concept. So even though I had other jobs from campus that were more technology oriented, I decided to take a chance on this one. This was a company called Wipro. And it was based in Bombay, and the sales part of it was selling computers, desktop computers at that time, to large corporations in Bombay. So I did that for a while, and I figured after some time that this sales job is not the right thing for me. Generally speaking, it doesn't exercise some of the core skills that I think I have. Made a switch at that time to software, did some programming for a while, did a stint in Florida as part of a consulting company, and really enjoyed that experience in Florida, working for a technology company. And I spent maybe a year or so in Florida, and I said, hey, you know what, this may be the kind of place that I would like to continue my career. Maybe after all, this software engineering is the right thing for me, even though I didn't necessarily want it to begin with. So I gave it a shot. After I finished that stint, I came back to California this time, and Guru, we worked together at Tandem. And even there, even though I started out in the software engineering there, I was getting bored. And I got bored because, I was sitting in front of a computer all day and coding, with a few meetings here and there, but mostly me and the computer. And it wasn't sort of gelling with my personality. It was, I as a software engineer for that group, I happened to see the product manager for that group, and I saw what he was doing, and he was talking to customers, he was talking to us, he was going to conferences, he was understanding the competitive environment there, and then bringing back a list of prioritized requirements and features to build out for the engineering team. And I said, hey, that's the kind of job I'd love to have. That prompted me to do my MBA. I did a part-time MBA. I'll come to that later in terms of whether that's needed or not. But I did my part-time MBA, graduated from there, got a job out of school as my first product management job into TIPCO, a company called TIPCO. Not many folks know it right now. And then switched to PM product management at that time and never looked back. So it's been a couple of decades now in product management. Absolutely love it. And the reason for that is because it combines my technology education with, I think, a skill set and and an interest in spending time with customers and really, really understanding their pain points and bringing that back to the engineering discipline. So that combination of straddling the technology thing on one side and the customer thing on the other side, bridging that communication between what the customer wants and what the engineering teams can build was a sweet spot for me. And the next couple of decades has been in those kinds of roles across many different companies that you mentioned.
Yeah. So interesting. I didn't know that you were doing sales. By the way, I was working, my first job was customer of Wipro. We were.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah. And we were working on Genius 360 or 386, sorry, Genius 386 Unix machine.
Yes.
By Wipro.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know that. So I didn't know that you're into sales, and we switched to tech, and then now you're again back to the business, not sales, but on the product management.
That's right.
So that's precisely what that leads to my second question is, see, you have certain passion, certain thing or certain abilities you have in you, and but you end up doing whatever you did because of nature of the degree you had. And I can speak for myself. When I did my computer science, the system told companies that this guy is eligible for coding. That's it. End of story. Even if my interest is in sales or product management, nobody will entertain the conversation. Yeah. So there is a gap between the industry and the academics. That's everywhere, not only in tech, in my opinion. Yeah. So, I mean, looks like you experienced that, right? Sort of, in a way, trial and error, right? You tried Wipro, and then you came to Florida. Hey, let me try this. Oh, okay, now it's clicking. It's kind of working. Okay, now let me go to. I mean, you came to California, and then you became tech, and then you saw the other side of things, and then you picked up, and the rest is all history. Point is that it didn't have to be trial and error. It can be very deterministic, because that's the whole point of spending 20 years in education, to figure out, okay, this is what I want to do. So the gap, what do you think of that gap? And, is there something that can be done to mitigate that? I don't think we can completely eliminate.
Yeah, I don't know if you can completely eliminate that gap, because I think what's happening is the education systems are always a step behind the industry, right? Or maybe many steps behind the industry in some cases. And depending on the field you're in, education systems tend to focus on a lot of the hard skills, right? And rightly so. And those hard skills evolve, and they keep evolving the education system to that. But in the meanwhile, the industry is moving in different ways. And so that's one thing where you may not find the match straight out of college, right? The other thing is, you may not know yourself very well. Remember, you're 21 years old, and I see this with a lot of kids that including my own kids, that come out of college. They don't know their true self. They went into school with a certain assumption, a certain expectation of what they want to do. Even the school experience, the college experience was different from what they thought it would be. And then as they were looking for jobs out of college, as they were doing the internships out of college, it was a variety of different positions. And, my son Rohan, he himself actually did an internship at Facebook the first year. And that was a software engineering one. And then he said, hey, no, this is not for me. And the second time around, he did a product management internship at Microsoft. So I think some people are lucky enough to have the experimentation of what you really want happen in the course of your education by doing several internships during your 4 years at school. Many people don't have that opportunity, and they get into what they get into. They learn on the job, they figure things out, and they say, hey, you know what, let me try something different, and again, till they finally find that sweet spot. And I've seen this happen with a lot of folks, Guru. It's not that there is no magic bullet to say, hey, coming out of school, I know exactly what I want to do for the next 30 years. I think you will keep discovering yourself, discovering the industry, and based on that, making those adjustments. And once you find your sweet spot, I think that guides you for the rest of your career.
Absolutely. You hit right on. That's precisely what I'm saying. The way I typically, when I talk to people, parents or students, the discovery process,
Yeah,
opportunity to discover yourself has to be built into education system, in my humble opinion, whether it's
that is
undergrad or,
true. That
and
is so
from the
true.
first year onwards, at least, if not high school, at least undergrad. And then, see, many times, right, at least, okay, that's going to be my next question. At least I haven't done. So a lot of times people just, they do undergrad, they go to graduation, and then
Sure.
multiple graduations, and then PhDs. Sometimes they go off and then go to MBA, and then by the time they get out, they're kind of fatigued, like so much they on their mind and conceptually. And when you get out, and then the world is somewhere else a little bit, and then you start wondering, why am I doing all this? So, how many people, tons and tons of people, they get into PhD and they drop out in the first
Yeah,
year because
yeah,
they realize that, man, this thing is going nowhere. Uh, I guess that discovery process is the most important, in my humble opinion, than, with all due respect, all other, the curriculum things or subjects that you learn. Once you discover, okay, this is what, for instance, take Rohan's case. Hey, I want to be in product management. The owner should be on the product management side of things rather than learning some programming, yet another programming language, and then
right, right.
pass that exam and then whatnot, right? So,
Yeah,
um, so I guess, that's precisely the point of my next question is, I we work with IIT. Sorry, I am Ranchi. So I
hmm
asked the very question. They're fairly young, and so the answer. Probably they don't. So I asked them, "Why did you join,
hmm
and what do you do after this?" So everybody said, I wrote this exam CAT, and then they got the score and got in. And then what do you do? I want to be in product management. So I asked a couple of them, I'll give you product management job right now. Would you quit your MBA? So they were not sure. So they were just smiling at me. So
yeah,
point is that I don't want them to quit, but I guess the question to you is that I remember we were neighbors at that time. So you're working very hard, extra time and having family and kids, and then going to college. I think back then you had to go to college, not even
that's
online.
right.
So those were not online days.
That's right.
And then so you had to slog and get it done. So my question to you is, if somebody said, not me, somebody back then said, hey, forget about all this. I know you're good. I'll give you product management role. I can define roadmap pathway for you in the product management. You never have to go back to college and whatnot. Don't waste your time. Would you have quit the MBA, or you would have continued thinking it's going to get something out of it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Guru. I think at the time, remember this is 20 years ago, right? So at the time, it was perhaps a given that this was enterprise software days. This is not cloud software. This is not consumer software the way
That's right.
things are today, right? So this is a very different world, and some people may not relate to that because they were not around 20 years ago. But enterprise software is a different world, and at the time, it was a done deal to sort of graduate from engineering into a product management role via the MBA route. It
MBA.
wasn't required, but it was sort of expected. And so that prompted me to do what I did. If you were to ask me the same question today, I'd say no way, right? I really don't think you need an MBA degree whatsoever in today's world, especially in the tech field, right? And there's a lot that you can learn. Of course, there are some benefits to certain coursework that would help you as a product manager. And I would say handpick those courses and do those courses independent of an MBA, and you'll still be very good. I'll give you an example of my son again, because he didn't do his MBA, but he did this dual course where he did the engineering piece and he did some of the business courses, I suppose. And some of the business courses involved some financial level work. Some of it involved how to work as a team, how to collaborate. Those are the skills that I think are really, really important, because I think, especially for a product manager, your single biggest skill that you want to develop from a soft skill standpoint is communications. And communications is two ways, right? It's not just talking, it's about listening. And how do you listen well? How do you truly understand what the customer pain points are? How do you translate that and synthesize that information into, priorities that the engineering team would then have to build is not an easy thing. And you're almost speaking two languages. To the customer, you're speaking more of a business and functional language, and to the engineering team, you're speaking more of a technical language. And so the ability to communicate effectively is, to me, the single biggest thing for a product manager. There's other things too, but that's, to me, very, very important. So back to your question, no, I would not even
Yeah.
MBA these days. Yeah.
My take of this whole thing is, see, I did a podcast with a girl who's doing a BBA, and see, somebody like you should be teaching. With all due respect to all those professors out there, who's teaching? I mean, with all due, again, so had they worked for Yahoo, for instance, right? So I asked her, I asked her, so how do they teach, how to come up with pricing? So how do you do comparative analysis? I struggle every day to come up with pricing. I have struggled. I mean, especially with our programs. How in the world someone is teaching you how to do it? And then she said, no, they're not teaching. We are going to figure out once we finish our degree. So, and so point is that somebody like you, if somebody like teaches, I mean, they must join that degree, in my humble opinion, because again, no disrespect to them. It's not the people, it's the system I'm referring to. And so if you conceptually see, we work with UC Berkeley Haas School. I speak to the people on a regular basis. You can come up with, all these, mock type business models and, this pricing. See, there is nothing real. And number two is there is no validation. It's like, okay, whatever, it's in the ballpark. Okay, you did a good job. So, see, I attended one of them, and then they made me do this coffee place in the conference room. We all sit stand behind the table. It's like kids game. So I guess the point is, as you said, right? For instance, Rohan did dual degree, where you have certain subjects that you needed help with or whatnot, and those things, as you said, you can learn.
Yes.
Back then, that was a different situation. We were in a pre-internet days.
That's right.
But nowadays, with everything that's going on, and I think the folks that are more driven towards doing things rather than just accumulating a bunch of degrees and see what happens, these guys have better advantage over those folks, especially in business and tech. At least I can't speak for all the disciplines. So speaking of that, now, so you're hiring tons of people in your company, and you've been doing that for a long time. So it's a fascinating thing for me, especially entry-level guys. Even it applies to experienced people too. Speaking of discovery process, right? For you, it took, maybe 3 to 4 years, I think, or 2 to 3 years. There are folks sitting on 10 years now, still trying to figure out what's going on. Right. So when you interview them, you can tell that this guy is not very sure about what he wants or not. And so especially entry-level guys, I'm pretty sure they don't know what they want. I think more or less clear in most cases, if not all. So what you consider as, hey, this is a red flag. I mean, I can't deal with it. Okay, yellow flag, okay, we can manage. Green flag, fantastic. So how do you put them into different baskets where, okay, I can somehow deal with this person and make it work, versus, man, this is not going to work. If it is experienced guy, right, you get a sense, and also you get through LinkedIn or other references, you have an idea, what's going to work or not. And when somebody's entry-level guy, they all have good GPAs. I mean, people are coming to all these big tech companies. How do you differentiate among these people?
That's a good question. I think it's a much harder question, of course, people coming straight from college. Most of the folks I recruit are actually seasoned people in the industry. Typically, you hire product managers who have years of experience in the industry before we hire them. But to the extent that I've done some hiring straight from college, it's not as much. And so maybe this is a better question for other folks. But definitely, I want to look for, especially in a product management role, which is what I'll be hiring for. It goes back to what I said before, which is, let me take a step back. What is needed for a product manager role today versus some time ago, let's say, when I first started out? It's a very interesting evolution of the industry, Guru. Before you would be a product manager, you would talk to a set of customers for your product. The salespeople are selling your product marketing people on one side. And at the end of the day, you're working with one engineering team to build that product. It was an enterprise software product. You delivered it on a CD, and people bought that product. They installed the CD into their computer in the data center, and that's how it used to work.
Yeah.
So the nature of product management was a little bit simpler because you were working typically with one or two engineering teams. Today, if you look at the Yahoos of the world, the Facebooks of the world, it's a very complex undertaking to produce a product, especially at scale, right? If it's a startup, it's a whole different thing. But if it's at scale and you're really talking about billions of users, it's not one team that builds that tool or that app. It's 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 teams, right? The low-level infrastructure, the middle tier, the front-end pieces. These are many, many different teams with complex interdependencies between them. So the reason I mention all of that is even as a product manager in today's world, you're working with cloud services, and I'm still talking about some of the things that you've heard from the industry today. You need to have very strong collaboration skills, very strong, right? Because you can't do it alone, and you're not working with just one team. You're working with so many different teams. So that's what I would look for, even with the person straight after school. I mentioned communication skills before, but it's not just how well do you speak, how well do you listen, but how well do you work in a team environment? How well do you work in a multi-team environment? How do you sort of deal with some of the friction that happens across these different teams? How do you build community? How do you build relationships with folks in different teams? How do you align people towards a common goal? These are not easy things to do, and nobody teaches this in college, right? Even if you do group projects in college, they're a little fake, and the real world really is very different, and there's a lot of friction in the system. So that's what I would look for straight out of college is those collaboration. We call them cross-functional skills, and those cross-functional skills are very important. One more thing I'll say is, of course, I'm leaving behind the technical skills, which is a necessary component. Those are hard skills. Those are necessary. We also look for that. But there's one very interesting last thing I'll say, which is culture fit. And this is sometimes people say, man, you can pick it up. What's the big deal? Just learn on the job. And I've seen time and time and time again, and I'm not saying this is just for folks straight out of school, but I've seen time and time again where people were rock stars in company X and failed miserably in company Y. Yeah. It's the same person. It's the same skills. They're product manager here, they're product manager there. But each, especially in the tech world, each company has some unique kind of culture. Some companies are very top down, and some companies are very bottoms up, and then there's everything in between. And if you try to do the same thing you did in company X with company Y, sometimes you find out it doesn't work as well. And you have to listen to the nuances of the company you're joining, really adapt your way of working to that company culture, and that's going to prepare you the best way to be successful there.
Yeah, 100%. So I call it read the room, and basically.
Yes.
Yeah. So to alleviate that situation, what we do at Siliconvalley4u is we take a very young student who is in first year or in a high school. So we bring this entire team. For instance, some of the students of our academy working with UC Berkeley students. So they work in a team setup where, just like we run sprints, just like what happens, there's a product manager, there's a business development guy. We we create for a real application. So it's a real project, and there's application is going to be put on the marketplace for a real customer and things like that. So basically, what I learned very hard way. I'm telling these guys that you treat everybody as a customer, even though the other person is a team member. Make sure that he or she is a customer. So when you send an email, make sure that you put every detail in it, so that that person should not come back and say, hey, where is this? So vice versa. And so if everybody treats everyone else as customers, and obviously there is a customer there too, and so then most of the things fall in place. And idea of this is very thing you just mentioned, to develop, we call it intangible skills.
Yes.
Tangible skills are all, Python, Google Cloud, yada yada. But then these, in my I put in some of my email message to them, 60 to 80% is attitude, 20 to 40% is actually technical skills. That's what I tell them. If you don't know Python for loop, we will teach you. But if you don't have right attitude, there's nothing we can do about it. And so, in other words, if you can even Google it, some of the tangible stuff, there's and you can get it and make it work, it's fine. If you don't have a right attitude, so it's a long journey. And so it's the simple things like, you have to be on time on Zoom. Simple things. Interestingly, somehow they take it for granted. These guys, very nice. When you speak to them, they're polite and everything. I had a conversation last week. The guy was late by 20 minutes. He get on the call.
Interesting.
He's not even up. I'm interviewing him for an internship, okay? By the way. So I'm waiting. He comes on, which is fine. Things happen. He didn't even apologize, nothing. He's just jumping right into it. And so, do you have any question for me? Yeah, I do. Why are you late? And then that the conversation didn't go well. I told him, you got to change. Once you change, we will reconsider you after a few months for internship. Until that point, doesn't matter what you want to say. So this is I find it very bizarre. I mean, I'm learning, to be honest, on the fly. Certain things you expect, basic things, right? So if you don't have those, if you have to start from negative 100 all the way to positive 100, so that's where this whole discovery process happens I think, because you go there and you get started with some of the treatments you get, and suddenly you realize, oh man, I'm not that, and I think I need to change myself. And by the time you realize, you lose 2-3 years, and then fast forward, suddenly you are in early 30s, and then you wonder what to do. So you have 2 kids and mortgage. So basically, we are trying to sort of alleviate that problem. And more importantly, by the time you finish your academics, so if you think for a second, right, by the time you finish your academics, you either invested about let's see, 17 years of your life into education or more. So if you do graduation, PhD, even more. Mm-hmm. So if you look at from that point of view, I invested in something for 17 years. I need to know basics. Where what do I want to do? I need to know. 17 years is a long time not to know about what you want to do, basic thing. And then right. So the emotional IQ, all the years, all those, if you don't have it, and if you're extraordinary, super extraordinary, like one of those top 1% of the world, I'm not speaking for them. I mean, if your technical skills, or tangible skills rather in this case, is in the spectrum of mediocrity, for the lack of better term, and if you're extraordinary, yeah, sure, everything works, I guess. If you're not, then you're going to have a long journey figuring out where you fit in. And you said it correctly. You join this company, things are working out. People are applauding you and whatnot, and then you quit, and I'm doing very well. I'm gonna get a little bit more package, yeah, and then you go there, and that guy says it's not working out. So, so,
That's right.
so that's when it's like Moneyball book, right? So it's the same thing.
That's right.
First time you start wondering, okay, things are not working, and so so it's not easy to all of a sudden when you are in late 20s or early 30s to figure out these things on the fly. It's
Yeah.
easier if you are still in college and you don't have a risk of losing paycheck, and so and also you are in that learning process where you're still trying to accumulate knowledge. So this is important part of knowledge, in my opinion. So which is better than learning this at the expense of paycheck, which I did, by the way, so I can speak for myself.
Yeah. We all
uh,
did, I think. Yeah.
so so I guess with that, like since our time, I think you kind of mentioned already, right? Since our time, everything changed, right? So as you said, you just explained how product management nowadays with 30, 40 teams, so much collaboration versus just give the spec to one team and say, hey, please go and work on it. But everything has changed. Colleges didn't. So everything you just said, I don't think many colleges know about it. That's my opinion, but I don't have direct knowledge of that. I don't think can talk to Rohan, I guess. I don't think colleges know how to bring that into their education, and they're not changing, and they don't have to, because we put our kids in those colleges no matter what, and so that's a problem. Is my because since they are not changing, and so my question to you is, do you agree with that they haven't changed, which you kind of agreed? And how do you suggest a guy or a girl who's going through it, hey, don't rely on the system, you have to figure it out, just like you said about Rohan,
Mhm.
right? Rohan tried one thing, it didn't work out. He tried product management, it worked out, and then he latched onto it. So what do you suggest a upcoming student, that, hey, you know what, if you just blindly try to fit into it, when you get out, you're going to have you might have a long journey of figuring out. So do these things. And so what do you suggest for those guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, first of all, I agree with you that colleges haven't changed. They've changed a little bit. They've changed in the hard skills, right? Better programming classes, different programming classes as technology has evolved. They have evolved. Let's give them that, right? But to your point, they didn't have to evolve in a dramatic way. It's a gradual way. It's an and the reason for that is, like you said, it's a monopoly. I mean, not monopoly, but you're going to go to college anyways. You're not going to, hey, they didn't change, so therefore I'm not going to go to college. I'm going to do something else. You're going to go anyways. You're going to pay the tuition, and so there is very little incentive for the college to change. My thoughts on what can alleviate this disconnect between the college world and the real world is having some kind of a bridge, right? And yes, to some extent, the internships serve some of that, right? I mean, if you do a second year or third year college and you do an internship, you get a taste of the real world. But by the way, even internships are slightly fake because it's very curated. The whole internship project is very, very curated. And I've seen this happen. People come to the real job and they said, "Oh my gosh, it's quite different from my internship." So, but more than the actual experience on the job, I think I've always thought about this in terms of, can real world people in some ways help people who are in high school or college?
Yes.
Can they bring that real world experience and just guide? It's not prescriptive. It's not a 1+1=2. It's more about, did you know how the real world works for these kinds of projects, for these kinds of functional areas? I think that would serve a big purpose, and it would open people's eyes to not just the sort of the hard-coded way that college looks at things, but bring these real-world examples to the table. And it's not even something that some people may benefit directly from it. Some people may say, "Hey, that's good to know, but but I know what I need, and I know what I want to do. But I feel a lot of college folks, and by the way, high school folks as well.
Yeah.
High school kids, I've seen, are very, very confused as to which discipline they want to flow into. And one day it's this, another day it's that. And your kids too,
Yeah.
Guru. I mean, they're trying to figure it out, and there's nobody to help them. There's nobody to guide them.
Absolutely.
And one last thing I'll say is that even during Rohan's discovery process, while he was in college, he used to bounce a lot of things off me. So I was a real world person in the tech industry. I was in engineering. I was in product management. He's in some ways lucky that we used to have a lot of conversations, first year, second year, third year, fourth year, as he evolved his direction. And I think he landed where he landed, but not everybody has parents who are in the same area necessarily. And so I wish there was some kind of counseling, real world people counseling, college people, real world people counseling. High school people, we've not invested in that as a country, as a whatever, and there is a gap.
Yeah. So actually, I want to touch upon a couple of things, right? So one is speaking of internships, you are absolutely right. And so if somebody goes to Uber and say do internship, does Uber know if this guy showed up to the work or not? Do you think they care? They have better things to do, or bottom line is that's not their business model. It's not like, okay, I'm going to take a bunch of interns and then curate. So if an intern did a good job, and if they put his work or her work into production, it's like one-off case type things. But that's not that's not the process. That's not the mainstream process out there. So as a result, as you said, people go to internships. It sometimes looks like a picnic, right? Just go and nobody, hey, good job, man, and see you later. So and then when they really come back, so then they say, hey, what's happening, man? You're not showing up.
Completely different job, right?
Yeah. So yesterday you weren't here in the office. What happened? So I guess that's the one of the problems we are trying to solve. Basically, from the get-go, we give a customer, and there is a customer, and they get a real-time feedback through us or directly from the customer. So as a result, although it is not heavily stressful, but at the same time, there is somebody who you have to serve. For instance, simple thing like we allow these guys to mentor the guys who graduated through our program. They become mentors to the next generation people. When you teach a younger guy, if younger guy says, I don't know what you're talking about, it doesn't matter how good you are. You're extraordinary Python developer, but you still have to make amendments to make sure other kids understanding. If you're not understanding, you're going to be replaced. I don't have a choice. So I guess the point is that I'm not trying to scare them, but at the same time, we are trying to get them understanding of, serving somebody. You're learning all these to serve somebody. If other person is not able to be served, you got to make changes. You can make changes. You just have to be humble and hold on. So that's the mindset, like you were saying.
Yes.
For in the case of Rohan, it's the mindset that you've been tuned to certain way for so long, and because you're writing exams, you got the GPA, you write the exam, you get the GPA, keep going and going and going. All of a sudden, like boom, like you're here, and the guy says, I don't know what you're talking about. So it's not easy to quickly change yourself and get into that, right? So not everybody can do it. So we put them through the process. I explain them that it's a process. You're not going to change overnight. If you change, you're doing very well. If you don't, it's not end of the world. You're going to change. You just have to adapt to the new process and make sure that you are doing this. If you know for loop, make sure that other guy understands for loop. When you make other guy understand for loop, you're also learning, to be honest. Until that point, you think you know, but you don't. So that's the kind of message, the structure we bring to that. And so sorry, 1 second.
No problem.
So So basically, those are the two things I just wanted to, so that, the idea of our program is not just learning certain bunch of skills that you're already doing. We give you opportunity to apply. We call it, it's like a plug into the real world. So,
Oh, that's good.
yeah, so it's like a plug into the real world. Ideal world is like, my take of this whole thing is, I'm been looking at this for 5-6 years now. If companies like, tech companies, like a body of companies, not a particular tech company, they should own the universities of CS and IT and all the degrees. And then all Kaisers and United Healthcare and all these guys should hire, or not should hire, own the medical universities. And then, whoever is doing the real business in those respective fields, they should own the universities, and then so that they have the ownership of bringing both reality as well as conceptual things. And then if you bring the professors, you bring people like you, and have them work together to build a curriculum / making things happen. That is the ideal way of doing it. That's not going to happen. So since that's not going to happen, we are trying, our level best to. We are working with 150 colleges now, so we sort of bring that plug in to the real world, so that these guys can become as good as anybody in the industry, and in turn can help the next generation people. So with that, so I'm going to come to my last question, which is, it's a fun question I ask. Is there a technology or a piece of technology that you envision that can be helpful for you, doesn't exist today? It can be for anything, something that's you want to use it for day to day, or something that you want to fantasize, like,
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't know if there's any one thing, Guru, that I would love to see, but one interesting thing is the whole world of AI. And it's really not one specific application per se, but I really think that there's, in today's world that we all live in, not just in tech, not just as a product manager, not just in certain fields, believe it or not, there's a large amount of work that we do that's very routine, repetitive and time consuming, and doesn't use a lot of brain power, not much cognitive thinking. It's just, repetitive. And I've always been, even though AI has been one of those things that sometimes scares people because it could potentially take away jobs and so on and so forth, I've always been a big fan of AI to solve those repetitive things. So to clear up your time and invest in the things that require critical thinking, that require some deep understanding of a space, that require collaboration. I feel we spend way too much of our time in the routine things. And if there was a way over time that AI could actually help us with some of these repetitive things in every walk of life, not just at work, at home, everything, I think we could be in a very different place than we are today. That's just a high level comment. There's no one specific.
Yeah. No, I think that I think you put it nicely. So one thing I like to add is that I know, for the last 15-20 years, right, people have been saying, computers are going to take away jobs and things like that. I don't think that's exactly the case. Although they are replacing some of the human functions, but humans are elevating to do better things.
Exactly.
So it's not like. So I am with you, and then all these RPA tools and all the bots and things like that. I just came to know last week that one of my college mates, which I didn't know, but he was junior, I think. So they launched a bot in Hyderabad where it not only serves food, it cooks food. It's an AI chef. So you can say, this is my dosa, and then it cooks right in front of you and serves the. So, I guess, AI, whether we like it or not, I think it's going to take over, and it is taking over, and it's going to be.
It's happening. It's already
happening, and the world
Yeah.
is going to be different. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I think, so AI is everywhere. And I think that's yet another reason I tell all these young people to have the awareness of technology. You don't have to do coding. That's not the point. Point is, if I go to nurse today and say, hey, why don't you use AI to, apply AI in your job,
treat the patient,
be better. And the person says, hey, AI, that's all tech stuff, man. I'm not into that. So there is a mental block that all these belong to tech industry and we do something else. So that stereotype has to be broken in my, I think it's going to be, but hopefully soon.
It'll happen, Guru. It'll happen anyways. It's happening in different fields all across the industry. It's not just tech. And so people are seeing that happen. That's what's causing some of the nervousness amongst people in terms of taking their jobs and stuff like that. But I do think
they are nervous because lack of awareness. That's my opinion.
Exactly.
It's not like,
and fear, right? I mean,
fear,
when you don't know something, you fear, right?
Yeah.
So I can understand where they're coming from.
This is fantastic, Brian. So thanks a lot. I know you have very busy weekdays as well as weekends, and I know you are a busy man. I know firsthand. I really appreciate taking time right after your second booster. So I hope you're doing okay. And
doing well.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks a lot. And we'll do another one, a little bit more in detail, something maybe not related to any company, maybe something to do with product management.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure. Would love that.
Yeah, so we deep dive.
Go deep into product management. Yeah, that'll be great. No, thank you for this opportunity. I enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, all right.